Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. One of my favorite topics in music theory is called integer notation. I call it chord codes because it sounds cooler and it's a lot easier to understand. I treat it like cheat codes, basically. So what these are basically your quick way to making chords. Now, I want to preface it by saying these are really powerful and really simple at the same time. This is your way of getting into music theory without knowing much about music theory. But at the same time, when you're really advanced in music theory, this can help you problem solve and do really high level stuff. So I've taught people who didn't know anything about music theory how to make chords, from a crowd before. A photographer. I had a model learn how to make chords in a Flash. Some random person who was in attendance at my event. I showed a photographer, if I didn't already say that, a drummer. People who weren't musically inclined as far as the keyboard goes. I showed them how to do this from scratch, sitting at a piano. So you literally don't have to know anything about music theory. As long as you can count, this will work for you. Now it's I'm just going to say this up front because most people get stuck on this. We start at 0 because this is what it's a semitone based value. I'm not trying to get too geeky with you guys, but basically sound designers use this when they're developing plugins. They don't call stuff minor thirds when you're making sounds in a plugin. So that's why I'm showing you this way so that you can apply it to any DAW using any plugin, okay? And it bypasses all this complex music theory language. So for example, every chord has a DNA, and the hard questions I ask people, I said, how do you make a chord without a scale? They usually can't answer that because then they go, okay, you mean, oh, you're just teaching people half steps. Well, what is a half step? We can really break it all the way down. It comes down to numbers, and chords are based in numbers. So if I close my eyes right now, I'm just going to close my eyes, pick a random key. I landed on B. You don't even need to know what number or what letter key you landed on, because most people don't know the letters yet because they're just getting acquainted to the piano. That's why I came up with this system and made it a little more palatable. So I'm starting here, again, not even looking at the keyboard on the screen, that is. I'll show you how to do this in the DAW in a second. So let's say we want to pick a chord from this list. And the reason this is so important too is you can now make chord progressions that aren't locked to your scale. A lot of jazz, R&B, and funk, they go outside the scale a lot. And that's what creates that sound. For the longest time, I thought you had to stay in scale, stay in key. But that's why I never got that bluesy sound, because in jazz, they'll go from note to note. That's what creates that, that sound, where I was just playing the scale as normal, which was this. And I never got that tone. And I was like, it doesn't feel like funk. And that's just by going note to note using half steps, they're called. So long story short, let's do a big chord, like a minor 11th. Okay, so if we look at this chord code chart, the minor 11th is 0, 3, 7, 10, 14, 17. So again, you can use this as a reference. And as long as you can count, you'll be fine. So the note you landed on, this is the 0 point because there's no distance. That's why we call it a 0 point. It's the starting point. Then all you have to do now is just count up your keyboard note by note until you finish out this chord code. So we're going to count up note by note. Okay, so we're going to count to 3. So it's 1, 2, 3. Then 4, 5, 6, 7. Play all these notes at the same time. 8, 9, 10. And then 14, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then 15, 16. Play all these at once. Now you have a nice lush chord. And you don't need a scale. And that's the whole powerful part of this, is I'm going to show you how to write music without the kind of beaten path. So you get a unique sound, and you get the sound that you actually want. Because, I'll do a couple more demonstrations just to show you. Now let me go into the DAW, because I didn't want to make this about the DAW. It has nothing to do with the DAW. You can do this at a grand piano, sitting in a lobby. I've taught this to my photographer friend, Walter, and he impresses his clients now when he goes to photo shoots, because he now knows how to play chords using those chord codes on any piano. So when he's at rich people's venues, he'll hop on the piano and play out the minor 9 chord. So let's make, what was I just playing? I forgot. A B. Now here's the other part that, people try to refute the system, but it just works. Now the main thing I want to say though, the caveat, is that we're not talking about scale degrees. So we're not talking about scales. Okay, so we're not going to be referring to scale degrees. Whenever I talk about the TH or the RD at the end of something, like the third or the fifth or the second, like the ND at the end of something, that's when we're referring to scales. Outside of that language, these numbers do not They're not referencing a scale. It's referencing pure number. Because even if we break it all the way down, I know I'm kind of going into the esoteric parts of this, but what is a scale? You know, if you really break down what a scale is, you could say, okay, it's half steps. Again, what is a half step? It's a number. You know, you go from 0 and you count up 1. That's a half step. So that's why the system is so powerful. It bypasses all that kind of stuff that you don't need to know right away. So let's start with B, and let's make a minor with, I say, a 9 chord, because I want to demonstrate to you why this is so important, chord codes. Because when you get out of the box of trying to fit into a scale all the time, you'll understand how jazz is so beautiful, or R&B, so how they get those chords. So the question is, now, again, if people are still refuting that chord code system, they may say, oh, well, you can't. Well, let me find the major 9 here. Major 9, where you at? It's hiding. Here it is. They may say, okay, well, you can't communicate that to another player, but that's not the purpose of the system. The purpose of the system is to build chords from scratch. And then once you know the names, then you call it out to each other. Okay, so here's, now again, when people are locked into that scale philosophy, they never ask, why does this sound good to go from a minor to a major chord, or vice versa? Like, why does that sound good even though we're going outside of the scale? So it shows the scales are not the only thing. Okay, so if that, you know, if people are like, well, you have to build things in the scale and you have to use scale degrees to make chords, then why does that sound good? Because technically, these notes are not in the scale. Okay, so I'm trying to break you outside of the box, because this is how you're going to get into that higher tier of musicality. So again, this is not a crutch. It's more so a starting point so that you can actually use your brain to create, and then you can go figure out the rest to wrap around it. But remember, like, a lot of house chords are really just ninth chords transposed. And if you don't know what a ninth chord is, you're not going to know that really it's just transposed. It's going out of the key on purpose. And jazz does a lot of the same things because they position their fingers to play the same chord structure, and they just move their hand up and down. Okay, so without, again, getting into the weeds of everything, but that's why this is so important. So let's get into some more complex stuff. So for example, you know, once you understand that a major triad is really 0-4-7, you can pivot off of that, because I teach the major chord is basically the foundation and the mother of all chords. So for example, we can start, let's do B. Okay, so the major chord is 0-4-7. So this is 0. Wherever we start is 0. Just count up your keyboard. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That will always make the major chord no matter where you are on the keyboard. Okay, but if you want to get into R&B, there's a really cool chord called a sixth chord. And all you really have to remember, and this is a major 6. There's a minor 6, but it doesn't really sound that great to me, in my opinion. The major 6th sounds really good. And all it is just we're adding a 6th over top of a major triad. And once you learn that a 6th is just 9 semitones from wherever you started, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now you know how to add harmonies and color tones without making things complex. Because if we get down to the gritty, again, I don't want to go too deep into everything, but a 5th is really just 7 semitones from the root note. So here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're always going to get the 5th no matter where you are. It's called a perfect 5th for that reason. If you want to get to the 4th, it's called, when I say 4th and 5th with the TH, I'm talking about scale degrees. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once you count the 5 semitones from wherever you started, that's called the 4th. And it's always going to be that. Okay, so that's why these chord codes are so important. It doesn't matter what scale you're in. Now the 6th chord is a really unique kind of chord that's used in R&B more as a turnaround chord. So I'll show you how to use that in a second. So let's use these chord codes in practice without using any scales or anything. We're just going off of based on how it sounds and how it feels. So let's do a major 7th, because I'll give you the short of it. 7th chords are more R&B and jazz, because they're like in between lush. Once you get into 9th and 11th chords, it just sounds jazzy no matter what you do. It just sounds too lush and jazzy. 7th chords are lush, but they're not overly lush. And then simple triads, meaning a 3-note chord, are pretty simple. They don't get too complicated to where they can be genre kind of loose. But the more notes you add, the more jazzy it becomes, basically. Okay, so we have B, D, and let's make a major 7th. So 0, 4, let's go back to our chord code chart. So we want to make a major 7th. And over time, you'll start to realize, okay, you're either going to start with a major seventh, a minor, where's it at? Minor seventh, or you're going to start with a minor ninth. You know, if you're going jazzy, you might start with a minor 11th. Those are pretty much your main starting options. Unless you're going with a simpler type of track, like The Weeknd or something, you would probably go with a simple triad, like a major or minor. But you pretty much start with the same types of chords. Rarely do you start on these odd chords like dominant, augmented, diminished. You really don't start with those chords because they're used for more turnaround. So, which is at the end of something. So again, let's make a major seventh. Let's reference our chord codes. The major seventh here is 0, 4, 7, 11. So let's go back to the screen. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3. Excuse me, 0, 1, 2, 3. I didn't realize that was a 3. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so here we have the B, and the way you name it is the chord type, which is a major 7, and then you name it after the root note. So it's B, and then the chord type, major 7. So it's root note, chord type, B, major 7. That's how chords are named. So you don't need to know what scale we're in. We don't even, this could be from it could be in multiple scales. That's why I don't want you to get locked into the scale mindset. So that's a major 7 chord, seventh. And I'm being lazy when I say 7 chord because technically it's major 7th, TH. And I think that's where a lot of confusion comes in. It's because we get lazy with music theory and we leave off the endings and stuff. Okay, now let's do a simple technique. Let's copy this over. And to change a major to a minor, all you have to do is just take the tonic and the fifth, and pull it up one. So now the chord code becomes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And it keeps the same top note. Okay, so we literally just converted a major to a minor chord, a major seventh to a minor seventh. Now notice how the major seventh is more open and the minor seventh is more closed. Now with R&B, the more closed you get, the more R&B it sounds for the most part. Now that's very R&B, but we're not in a key. And this is why I want to break you outside of that mentality, because if you think that everything has to rely around a key, you're never going to know when to flatten notes, when to go outside the key. It's not going to make sense. But when you do it based on your intent first, and then you go back to all the music theory stuff, then it makes more sense. Again, I don't want to get into, I could talk for 3 days about why the system's confusing for learning. So we have, B major 7. Then we see, I got lazy again. B major 7th, not B. This is C minor 7th. Now let's throw in that chord that I talked about, the 6th chord. Now, again, I like it better with the major root. So again, let's start with this top note and let's work backwards this time. So this is where it gets really advanced with music theory using integer notation or chord codes, I call it, because here's where you get to be a mad scientist about your turnaround chords and all types of stuff. So basically you can reverse engineer any chord. Your brain really listens to these top notes. Okay, so what we're going to do is reverse engineer this chord. So all I'm doing is changing the bottom portion. So the top portion is staying the same here. I just want to change the bottom portion to it, but our ear is latched onto that top note. So I'm going to make a major 6th here, and the chord code is 0, 4, 7, which is the major triad. You'll get to memorize these over time. But the major triad is 0, 4, 7, and all we're going to do is add that 6th, which is just 9. Okay, so we're going to work in reverse. So usually when we make chord codes, we start at the bottom and we work our way up. This time we're going to start at the top and work backwards. So we have to do the code backwards. So we're going to start at 9 this time and work down. So it's 9, 8, 7, 6. I missed a step. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So it gets more dense as we go up. See how it feels like we're transitioning or crossing some type of bridge, and then we can come back to a conclusion. Now here's where chord codes are so powerful, because now I can basically say we want to go back to the tonic feel, but we want to make it sound lush, like more jazzy. And this is when I said, when you understand the intent behind chords, you don't have to rely on a scale anymore, unless you're just trying to discover new chord types. But in this case, I want it to be more lush. And like I said, the more notes you add, the more lush something becomes. So here's the other powerful part to chord codes is you'll start to realize a pattern. So this is a major seventh chord. Okay, but what happens if we extend this chord? Now, extending just means adding notes. So for example, it's how we take this. This is an F major 7 chord. If I want to extend it and add a G, I just made it an F major 9. Now if I add another note up top, I'm extending the harmony. Okay, so I want to do the same thing, but again, we want this to be the top note. So we're not going to add notes going up, we're going to add notes going down. And once you understand, you'll start to see patterns here. Basically, whenever you have a major root chord, the next chord down, if you want to extend, is a minor. So I know that all I have to do the quick math, instead of counting this whole chord, I know this is a major, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The quick way to extend this chord is to count down as if it's a minor chord. So it's 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And what does that create? A minor ninth chord. So I just converted a major seventh chord into a minor ninth chord simply by counting down 1, 2, 3 at the bottom. So you'll start to realize these small little patterns, how you can transform one chord to another without complex math and doing all this extra stuff. So this way you get more lush sound without, see? And who knows what scale this technically is in. Now, if you wanted to map the scale, let's play the notes and see what. I would debate that that's the scale. So let me see what, I'm trying to think of a quick way to do this. Let me just map the notes out. Okay, so we have B. So this is my technical scale, just based off of the notes that I feel like should be in here. So I'm playing notes that sound harmonious with the chords. It's hard to see though. Okay, there we go. Okay, then back to B. So again, I'm not going to go through everything about everything. But if you look at the structure, what I like to do to identify a scale quickly is look at the whole steps and half steps. So where does the half step occur? Right here. So whenever I see a half step and a whole step next to each other, that usually gives me the quick insight to what key we're in. Okay, so this is a whole, half, and then it's, if we continued on, let's copy these notes up. And I'm missing one note, C sharp. So if I start at D sharp in this case, so it's whole, half, whole, which tells me to, again, you don't need to memorize this, but whole, half, whole, which are whole steps and half steps, whole, half, whole. That lets me know it's a minor root. Then we have whole, half, whole, which is a natural minor. So in this case, to triple check, again, we're getting kind of in the weeds, but to triple check to make sure it's a natural minor is you align it up with the Aeolian scale, which is the natural minor, and just map that out. So this could be either E flat natural minor, or you could look at the relative major scale to figure out what key we're in. Now we're going deep into music theory. But the relative scale, whenever you're going from minor to major, think of it like your chords. Whenever you go from a minor to a major chord, the way you transform it is that one note. So for example, this is kind of a bonus. I don't feel like editing this part out, but it is something you need to know. So a minor chord, 0-3-7, and a major is 0-4-7. Okay, so it's one semitone difference. Basically, the middle note, you raise it one, and that becomes a major chord. So when you apply that knowledge to your relative scales, it helps you understand that go up 3 semitones from the root note or the tonic in this scale, which in this case is going to be E flat, 1, 2, 3, and that's your relative major scale. In this case, 1, 2, 3 semitones, pardon me. Not scale degrees. That's where I confuse my own self. It's 3 semitones. So it's 1, 2, 3. This is your relative major scale. So in this case, it'd be F sharp major scale. And to triple check that, you would just grab a major scale or the Ionian mode, and you would just put it at F sharp and just see if the notes match, and I'm correct. So that's how you quickly find your relative scales. Not that that's kind of essential to this teaching, but the whole point was just to show you that this scale is E flat minor. So here are the notes. And what I'm going to do now is overlap these notes with the chords to see. Hold on, let me make this easier to consume. I didn't make this the easiest to look at. Okay, so now we're going to overlap these notes and see which notes are actually in the scale and which ones are not in the scale. Now, if you're being taught that you have to stay in the scale and build your chords from the scale degrees and you have to stay in key and all this, you're never going to get to this R&B sound, because the one chord that we stepped outside the scale on looks like to be our second chord, which is usually people tell you to jump outside the scale in the third or the fourth chord. And we jumped out in the second chord. So, you know, how would you even know to go to this chord type if you didn't have the intent behind it? Okay, so I'm showing you harmony on a deeper level outside of scales. Then you can use scales to help you with melodies and different things. But that sounds very smooth to me, very R&B-ish to me. Now I'll show you one more technique. Again, I'm not trying to make this video 1,000 years long because I might have to chop it up. Hopefully it's not too long already. But the next chord type we want to look at is a turnaround chord. And I'll wrap it after this video because there's a lot of notation to go through. But you can use any of these chord codes. The quick way to navigate is major, very vanilla sounding, you know, like the Weeknd type of main pop. Any kind of seventh chord is going to be for R&B type tracks. It's lush, but not too lush. Ninth chords are getting into the jazzy realm. Rarely do we use major ninths. I'm not going to say never, but just rarely. It's just not a super used chord. Major 11th, the same, not really a super used chord. But again, the more lush you go, the more notes you have, the more jazzy it becomes. So again, when you could talk about 9th, 11th, and 13th chords, that's very jazzy in that realm. This minor chord is, again, pretty simple, used across the board in genre. Minor 7th is R&B and kind of jazzy. Minor, again, once you get into 9th, 11th, and 13th, it gets very jazzy. Augmented chords are used for turnarounds. So turnarounds are at the end of stuff usually. This is what I'm about to show you. These are used to create tension to then go back into the regular chord progression. So these usually take you out of the key on purpose to pull you back in the key. So augmented and augmented 7th, again, just an extension of that. Diminished chords, again, used to really take you away from something and pull you back in. Diminished 7th is just a smoother version of it. Dominant 7th, you know, again, taking you away, pulling you back. Minor 6th, again, a borrowed chord. Major 6th, same, half diminished, and suspended 2nd and suspended 4th. Again, most of these chord types, starting from augmented all the way down, are basically used to turn around your music, to bring it back. So let's try these different types. Let's try augmented. So again, I'm just using the simple technique to where the top note is just going to stay the same. So it's 0, 4, 8. So we're going to assume this is the top note. So this is 8. We're working backwards now. So it's 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now let's just see which turnaround chord sounds the best at this point. Sounds pretty cool, but it's really just whatever flavor you like. Let me give it a different timing too. So that was augmented. Let's try augmented 7th. So we're going to add 10 to it. So it's 1, 2 up top. And I'm just going to grab this whole chord and transpose it down. So it's a lot of tension whenever you have notes close to each other. I like this. This sounds the most cool. That sounds the coolest to me. It's probably my favorite turnaround sound for this track. So augmented 7th is a winner for me. I'm going to copy this. Or let me copy this, put it to the side. So we could try all these out. Just so you could hear how they just have a slight difference. Diminished is 0, 3, 6. So again, working backwards, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now this is cool with diminished because you can continue to count in threes. It will never, like everything will just go back. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You'll start repeating notes. because 3, when you divide 12 by 3, it's 4, and then it just repeats itself. So all these notes will start to repeat. That's the cool part about diminished. So let's see what the regular diminished sounds like. It's cool. You know, it's not the greatest, but it's cool. Let's keep extending it. You know, you can keep making it jazzier and jazzier by just adding that 3 down, 1, 2, 3. See how that one note changes the whole vibe. It's very churchy sounding in my opinion. Funny enough, I think the tritone was like banned from church, and that uses a lot of the tritone. So that's diminished seventh. We kind of took it into its own chord at that point. I think this is a whole different chord called a, I forget the exact chord name, and don't give me the guess in here. Let me find the chord name. It has a chord name to it, and it's so obscure. It's called the trichord, I think. No, some other, I thought it was called the trichord. Okay, so then we have, oh yeah, duh. Then we have the octave. Okay, so I was right. So then we have the dominant seventh, which is 0, 4, 7, 10. So really, it's a major triad with just a minor seventh on top. So that's an easier way to think of it. So it's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. I really don't like this. They use it in guitar. I just don't like the dominant seventh, really. It just, I don't know. It just sounds too like we're in a hurry. I don't know, it just doesn't, that's not my favorite type. Then minor sixth, I really don't like these, but I'm sure with the different voicing, you can get a different tone out of it. So it's 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So again, it's a minor triad with the sixth on top. That one sounds cool. This one like grabs my attention a lot. So the cool part is that you can have different endings, turnaround points, and I'm not going to bore you by doing every single one. I didn't realize it was going to be such a science experiment. Let's do 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. This one's too vanilla for me, like too uplifting. It's like, dun, like I'm ready to go. That one doesn't give me that same emotion as the other two. Let's do half diminished. This one I don't really use at all. So I'm actually curious if this sounds like 10, 6, 3, 0, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And this helps you step outside your box. That's why I have these chord codes. Now this sounds depressing, but cool. It's like, dun, dun, dun. That's a nice ending. It would just have to be at the end of something, in my opinion. That one sounds like a finishing to a song type of. That actually made me a little emotional, guys. I'm just playing. Okay, so and then 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Wait, I counted back. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, this is a suspended second. That's good, but not for this type of beat. It's more for like a trap beat. And then suspended fourths are good for trap beats too. You basically just take the middle note and just pull it up. Now that one's I like this, like, it's like a movie, like it keeps me on that treadmill. Very motivating type of sound to it. So these are interesting. So we have 4 potential endings that we can use for these chords. So what I'll do is I'll create a long chord progression. Really, I'll just copy this chord progression 3 or 4 times, and we'll just swap out the endings. Okay, just to show you how, even though they sound similar, they do give a subtle emotional. They have, getting tongue twisted, guys. They all have a different emotional value. That's what I'm trying to articulate. Now, again, I didn't wrap the chords perfectly going into the next thing, but we're gonna hear how versatile you can be. And again, we're not worried about a scale. Like the scale is the last thing on my mind right now. Okay, so let's hear this through. Let me mute my mic. So see how you can play with those different endings. It's not a make or break. They just all give like a subtle difference. So that's why I said these turnaround chords, you can kind of play with these to pick your own favorite. There's no right or wrong one. Just don't get caught up on those types of chords, in my opinion. They don't, you know, I mean, maybe you could use these in the meat of your chords, but I found that these are more for transitioning throughout your chords. I'll wrap it here because hopefully the video isn't too long. Thank you for watching. It's Game from BusyWorksBeats.com.